So good to see you tonight. Thank you for being with us. Kasim, let's sit down. We'll just go ahead and get comfortable right now. We're going to jump into it running tonight, but let me say thank you for making the time to be here, for prioritizing what it is that we're about to jump into and talk about. It's everywhere. It's not like you have an option whether you're going to think about it or not. It's all over everything, and it's critically important that I believe as churches, as whatever is happening in culture, we need to speak to these issues. What does the Bible say, and how should we respond to this? If you don't know, then you don't know. There's nothing wrong with not knowing, because all of us start off not knowing. And then we're on a journey together to discover not just more opinions, but truth. How many of there's like, you get 5 people together, you got 6 opinions. Like people change midway on you, right? And so our goal here tonight, let me just kind of let you know kind of what some ground rules look like. First of all, no one's mad in here. All right, so we're not busting people up. That's not what this is. We're going to talk very academically in the sense of let's talk some facts, not emotion, facts. We're going to remove emotion from this tonight, and we want to talk very historical, factual, geopolitical, biblical, U.S. history. We're going to bring some things to perspective tonight that we can go there, and we're going to kind of lay a groundwork for that, and then we're going to open it up for questions, because we're not just going to tell you what we think. We want you to ask any question you want. It can sound irreverent. It doesn't have to make, like, it can only ask questions that make Israel look good. Oh, no. Please ask the challenging questions about Israel. Because if we can't speak truth to those things, then we're wasting our time. We're playing smoke and mirrors. There's nothing to hide in this arena, and we need to ask those. So, all that being said, thank you for being here tonight, and we're honored that you took time to be here. Let's have a word of prayer, and we're going to kick this thing off. Father, thank you for the joy that we have of serving you, knowing you with our heart and our life, and knowing that you direct and lead every aspect of our life. The issues that are going on in our world matter to you. Those in Israel and Gaza, yes, but issues around the world. Your heart is for humanity. You love people. And as your people, we love people. What you love, we love. What you hate, we hate. And so tonight, God, I pray that this atmosphere would be filled with truth, that you would guide and lead all of this. The things that I say, the things that Kasim says, the things that are mentioned in this room tonight, God, let everything lead us forward. I pray that any delusion, any kind of deception would all come down, and that we would see, hear, know, and understand, and begin to truly get a sense as to where you're leading and how we should look to, feel, and pray on the issues that we're seeing in our world. Thank you for peacemakers that are in the room tonight. We give you thanks for it all. In your wonderful name we pray, and everybody said, Amen. Well, y'all, we got a movie star in our midst tonight. I am hyper excited to have my friend with me. I play in this capacity, but I want to talk very, very serious in this role as well. I met this gentleman years ago, and from the time I met him, I knew I was talking to someone who was authentic, who was real. Don't you like genuine people? Like no pretense about it, like who you meet, that's who they are. And we started having some wonderful conversations, sharing ideas, thoughts, laugh together, discuss things together. And I just fell in love with this guy's heart. And we look a lot alike, I understand that. And but as soon as we met Kasim, and you're going to hear from him in just a moment, I just loved who he was, his heart. He married a lady, married way over his head. Cheyenne is here tonight, his wife is. Cheyenne, would you please stand up? I want everyone to see before I get into Kasim. There's Cheyenne right there. That's right. And had the joy of performing their wedding at the University of Florida. And had a good time there, and all the FSU fans are all of a sudden, I don't know, I'll stop it. It's good. Had a great time there. But Kasim is on the team full time with Christians United for Israel. This is not a sidekick that he does. This is not just this is his life. Even if he were not with Christians United for Israel, this is what this man would be doing, because it's his heart, it's his drive in standing with Israel. And so very excited to have him. He's prolific in what he says, what he knows, and what he knows is not just head knowledge, it's experiential. I want to give you an idea. I know you've not heard from him yet. I'm going to go there. I'm going to do the right introduction just right, but I want to show you what I'm talking about because Christians United for Israel put a movie out across America in movie theaters a couple of years ago, and the movie was tremendously impactful. I'm going to show you the movie trailer so you understand who's sitting here, and then we'll come back, we'll address the movie, and then you're going to hear a bit of Kasim's story and what it's been like getting to where he is as being pro-Israel. I think you're going to enjoy this. Check it out.
It all begins with words. Uttered by individuals, repeated by others, and became a philosophy, an ideology.
I hated Jews. I hated America. The Jews were the reason for all the evil in the world.
We must insist that the story be complete, full, and the truth.
Ladies and gentlemen, Kasim Hafeez. Hafeez is not an American name, is it, Kasim? That doesn't sound very like a Southern American name.
It's a traditional name from Louisiana. No, my family are from Pakistan, from a Muslim background.
Let me say this. The gentleman that Kasim was in the movie with, his name is Irving Roth, of blessed memory. He's passed away a couple of years ago now. He very much became a part of the family at Christians United for Israel. Holocaust survivor, traveled the nation. He and Kasim, side by side, going to colleges and universities across America, sharing the truth and the reality. Irving Roth had the ability to share his story of being in the concentration camps with such truth, but in such a way that he had you laughing one minute but sharing realities the next that so impacted your life, that was so strong. Kasim and he traveled side by side. Again, you saw the paradox. The man who was actually raised to hate and desire to see Jews die, only to now be traveling together. And not just that, but I love the last part. Not only did, and I think this was just a huge act of honor and respect on your part, Kasim, and I love it, but Kasim asked Irvin for the privilege, the opportunity of actually sharing the tattoo that was put on Irving while he was in the Holocaust. Irving gave him the permission, and he took on his tattoo, and so they share that together. And so an amazing bond and friendship that is spoken across this nation. Kasim, share with us your story. You didn't start off loving Israel. You had a very different background. And just share that if you would.
For sure. I'll try and condense this as short as I can. So I grew up in England, as you can probably tell from my accent. Grew up in a Pakistani Muslim family, and I drifted towards extremism and radicalism when I was younger. The thing I really want to point out is I grew up in a predominantly Pakistani and Muslim community, but my family, it was a very traditional immigrant story. They came to England for a better life, economic opportunities, and from like my grandparents who were the first generation in England, they rejected the extremist ideas because they'd seen it in their country. That was one of the motivators to leave. But in the UK, identity is such a confusing situation. There is a narrative in Europe, which sadly exists, that to be truly European, English, French, German, you have to be white. So for British Pakistanis like me, we never really felt we belonged. But we grew up Muslim, and it was something we knew. So when in the 90s, extremist groups started to really play an active part in our communities, it resonated. And there was a lot going on in the world which contributed to that, which I'm going to leave out now because we'd be here for 2 days. So as I got older, I kind of leaned into that extremism because it gave me a sense of belonging. And one of the things that extremists do, and I've noticed this in any sort of ideology, they turn you into a victim. They turn you into a victim who has no way of recourse for their victimhood. So I was always told, so I lived in a neighborhood there were economic issues, there were poverty and educational, all these things, crime. It wasn't a good neighborhood. And these groups would say, this is happening because you're Muslims. The West is against you, and this is why you're victims of the West. Now, that situation in my community, while not good, every immigrant community who'd been in the UK had faced it. Before that, it was the Jewish community when they came to the UK. But when you frame it as it's because the West is at war with you, like, who do I go and see to fix that? So it puts you in this circle of resentment and anger and further isolated from the country that you live in. And as I got older and got more engrossed in that, I was pushed to this extreme that I wanted to join a terrorist group. And I was on that verge, I can't even tell you the name of the terrorist group, Lashkar-e-Taiba, who are a very notorious terror group in South Asia. It was literally at that point when I was making plans to go to a terrorist training camp, I came across the book, The Case for Israel. And essentially that challenged everything I knew. And I didn't buy this book in hopes of finding out the truth. It was to essentially go, these are the lies, I want to equip myself with their lies so I can fight back against Israel and the Jews, and because I believe that they were pure evil. Because that's what I was always told, and I didn't know anyone Jewish to humanize the Jewish people. Picking up that book, in the space of maybe 2 years, I was struggling to disprove some of the key arguments. And I just couldn't let it go, because when you believe something to the point you're willing to die and kill people for, you don't read a book and go, got it wrong. Right. It doesn't work like that. And eventually that would lead me to go to Israel, again, seeking to disprove what I had read. And, to be cliche about it, the truth sets you free. Seeing it with my own eyes, seeing the truth, reality, I couldn't escape it. And felt an obligation that I had to speak out because, one, the poison that I had spread, but also for me, look, I am a Pakistani kid from not a great neighborhood in the UK. If I can stop one person with my background not going down that awful route, it was a win. Didn't work out that way. The community weren't that receptive, interestingly. And look, I toughed it out. I advocated. I was speaking at campuses all the time. I had a full-time job in the UK, separate from this. Then it just got to a point when I was like, I can't keep looking over my shoulder. Like, this is no way to live. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but when people in England need a backup plan, we go to Canada. So that's what I did. And that's where Kufi first reached out to me, and I met Irving, and that changed a lot of things. And then I met my wife, and she was like, I'm not moving to Canada, it's too cold. So we're in Florida now, and I work for Christians United for Israel full-time.
Thank you, Cheyenne. We're so glad. We appreciate that on so many different levels. I remember the first night that we got to meet Kasim when he was speaking for CUFI. It was in Washington, D.C. at one of our summits. That's the first time I heard him there. I believe that was that your first time that you had spoken? Yeah. And the crowd was just on the edge of their seat hearing the details of his story and how his heart had transitioned from hating Israel to actually now advocating for Israel, almost converted to Judaism in his faith because he became so enthralled and drawn to the reality of that. But again, I told you in the beginning, he's genuine and he's a truth seeker, to the point that he was even honest about what he was learning and what impacted his life. Even if he had been radicalized, truth still mattered to Kasim. And that's why I love his authenticity and being here tonight in that moment. I mean, it's really, you meet authentic people when they're willing to admit they're wrong and change course. That's the next level right there. Let me just say there's a lot of that going on today, that people are not always truth-seeking. They're just there to tell you what they feel and what they know, and they back off and run from that. I have no time to talk to people who are not seeking truth. I'm not here to argue with anybody. I'm here to discuss realities and discuss truth because I can always learn like everybody else can. But no sense in just arguing for the sake of arguing. I heard his story. It was so impactful, and seeing what God has done in Kasim's life, has given his heart to the Lord. He's a student of theology now and pursuing that and just doing some amazing things, but speaks on behalf. And your role right now with CUFI is what, Kasim?
Deputy Director for Messaging. So our messaging that we release, videos, etc., I will go over them. Also, right now, I'm working to make sure that our field staff and the rest of the team have the most up-to-date information about what's going on. Also, educational materials. We have a new, very soon, it's on hold because of everything happening, we'll have a massive kind of vault of educational one-pages from everything from what happened in 1920s in Hebron to right now.
Yeah. If you're looking for someone for information and facts to follow, you need to follow this man on all social media platforms. He's got videos that he's putting out weekly, giving you up-to-date what's going on. They're not taking long. He doesn't talk over anybody's head. Makes the situations real, and would be tremendous for you. So that's great. Well, let's talk here real quickly and just laying some context before we get into some questions here. Israel or Palestine? Who is it, and who does the land belong to? This is something interesting to look at. And if you're a person of faith, then what I'm going to tell you will matter to you. If you're not a person of faith, it might not, but I still would say that it has some argument. Israel has been in the land. Jews have been in the land of Israel for 4,000 years. This is something that God decided. And by the way, King David determined, and he decided that Jerusalem was the capital of Israel 3,000 years ago. You all hear me? I'm going to go ahead and put this out there just for what it's worth. The idea of a people group being Palestinians didn't start until 1960. 1960, 4,000 years. Okay, so let me just get here. Genesis chapter 12. God promised Abraham in Canaan, that's modern day Israel, to your offspring I will give this land. Genesis 15, God expanded on the unconditional promise. To your descendants I've given this land, from the river of Egypt as far as the great river to the river Euphrates. Genesis 17, God reiterated the promise to Abraham, adding that the land gift is irrevocable. It is yours forever. The whole land of Canaan, where you now reside as a foreigner, I will give as an everlasting possession to you and your descendants after you. Genesis 26, 3 through 4, God repeats the promise to Abraham's son Isaac. Genesis 28:13, God repeated the promise again to Isaac's son Jacob. Then God later changed Jacob's name to Israel, and through Jacob came the 12 tribes of Israel. Do you kind of see a pattern here? The whole earth belongs to God. He has the ability to sign over a deed to anybody he desires to do so. He deeded the land to Israel, not just Abraham, but Abraham's offspring, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and God expanded the land. You might be shocked to hear this, but I want to give you the land boundaries that God actually promised to Abraham, because we see a sliver, but let me tell you what God's opinion is. The land that God stated belongs to Israel includes everything in modern day Israel, plus the territory occupied by the Palestinians called the West Bank and Gaza. That would be Judea and Samaria. We'll get into that in a minute. Plus some of Egypt and Syria, plus all of Jordan, plus Saudi Arabia and Iraq. That's the landmass that God said this belongs to Israel. Just for what it's worth. So Israel is currently existing in a partial part of what God decreed was the land of Israel. And Israel's not fighting to take over more land. They're not trying to do that. They're just happy being where they are. They want everyone to be happy. But this is the reality of where we're sitting right now. As I said, in 1960, the idea, the name of a Palestinian group, we are Palestinians, just hit late 50s, 60. That's when it became an identity.
One thing I would say, so if you look back to the 1900s, after the Mandate, when the British were in control of the region, people will argue, well, there was the Palestine Philharmonic Orchestra, there was the Palestine soccer team, and there was. And if you look at the pictures, they're all Jewish. If you look at the music that the Palestine Philharmonic Orchestra were playing in 1930, they were all Jewish songs. So it's like it's interesting how words and titles are used without fact. Like when you think about who considered themselves a Palestinian in 1930, it was not the Arabs. In fact, if you look at some of the letters from the leaders of Egypt, they saw the term Palestinian as derogatory because they saw it as this refers to the Jews. Sorry, I just wanted to add
No.
that.
It's a very, very important distinction. Thank you. So how did the name Palestine get on the land? Because you open maps today, you see Palestine, not Israel, on many, many maps. When the Jews rose up, they were pushing against Rome. In 135 AD, the Roman authorities, in order to quash the uprising of the Jews and in order to try to get their name and identity off the land, Rome renamed the land from Israel to Palestina. Palestina is a derivative. It's a fabricated name that Rome came up with, they put on the land in order to get Israel off the land, but the name itself actually is a derivative that means Philistines. Why that? Because Philistines were the number one main arch rivals of Israel. And so Rome said, in order to quash you and remove your identity from the land, we're going to rename the whole land after your arch rivals. They were putting it in the face of the Jews, just saying, how do you like us now? Renamed it after the Philistines. And guess what's really interesting? The Philistines' main region that when they did live, and David was fighting them, the region they lived in was actually Gaza. So the land was renamed, fabricated by the Romans in order to slap the Jews that were living in that land. Palestine is a fabricated name because there's never been a Palestinian quote-unquote army, a Palestinian king, a Palestinian history, a Palestinian anything. There's no history of a Palestinian people per se. It was a land that was renamed in order to slap Israel. Does that make sense to everybody so far? You all following that, or just for what it's worth? So this is where we are, and this is why you hear the back and the forth, Jews, Palestinians. In fact, the big thing that you might hear people raise in order to try to argue with you, well, tell me who Semitic people are. Who are the Semites? I've had people throw that at me because we call it being anti-Semitic, but the truth is that there are a lot of people that would call themselves Semites, but anti-Semitism is against specifically the Jewish people. So we're dealing with a battle of words. It's a battle of phrases. Every word is pregnant. It means something, but you've got to go deeper than headlines. You can't just take what's spewed on Instagram as, oh man, hold on, read deeper. There's more to the story. It's interesting. People who are really good at anti-Israel rhetoric know what to leave out. Because if they put it all in, they'll actually undermine their own argument. They have to retract things because here's the difficulty in not just supporting Israel, but anything. Somebody can make one accusation to you, and it takes about 7 or 8 words to make the accusation. It takes about 3 or 4 paragraphs to bring the answer to undo it. Everybody enjoys the 8 words, but nobody wants to stay for the 3 paragraphs. And so when people throw slants or objections to Israel, there's answers. They just don't want to hang out long enough to actually hear. We're not dealing with academia. We're dealing with people that are emotionally fueled, that read headlines and are looking to just spew something here and there and jump on bandwagons. So that being said, it brings us back to these conversations and talking this through here. I want to give you a perspective of anything else you would throw in here, Kasim? Okay, so the map. I'm getting ready. We're going to go here. We're coming to you, so get your questions ready. Don't forget your questions. Write them down. Let me show you map-wise where we are. Can you put up map number 1, please? So just want to give you an idea. Israel lives in a really rough neighborhood. You see the red square? That's Israel. Okay, you see the green part down on the southern part, right below, well, the red square kind of goes in it, but the green part down low, that is Egypt. Just below, just down to the left. Then you've got over the orange, over to the right is Jordan, as you can see. You go up above that green area, right up above Amman, Jordan, is Syria. And then you go over to the left, that blue sliver that's going up by the water, that's Lebanon. So all of these countries are Arab countries. There has been quality peace in some arenas with Jordan and Egypt. When I say quality, it's because we've not had big infighting in that capacity. Syria has their own civil war going on, and it's a mess what's happening up in the Damascus area. And Lebanon, right up there, that blue sliver, is where Hezbollah is located. The area, you can barely see it. In fact, go to the next slide if you would. This shows a little bit closer. We're kind of zooming in here a little bit. You see down on the far left side, you see the Gaza Strip. You see the far left lower part? I'm going to show you more of the Gaza Strip in just a minute. But this is Israel proper. If you go up and you see the light color on the map where it says West Bank is what all Arabs will call that region. It is the western bank of Jordan headed towards the Mediterranean. They won't call it its biblical name. Its original name is Judea and Samaria. Jesus went to visit the Samaritan woman. Judea and Samaria. This Judea would be the lower part, Samaria up. Bethlehem is in the Judea-Samaria area, and it is under Palestinian authority control in the sense of you leave Israel proper and you go into their region in order to go to Bethlehem. You see that how the indention, you see where Jerusalem is in the middle? Yep. This is where you get into a fight over Jerusalem. Eastern Jerusalem, that part, they're wanting to take over Eastern Jerusalem. The goal is to take over it all, but they fight for, they talk about Eastern Jerusalem. But this is how close everything is tied together. And the West Bank area is not in, it can get really nuanced. It's broken into 3 different zones. Zone A is all Jewish, Zone B is Jewish and Palestinian, and Zone C is mostly all Palestinian. So, and there's different authorities that get involved in that. But you'll hear a lot of pushback on Israel for building apartments inside of the, what they call West Bank or the Judea-Samaria area. They push back on that, say it's wrong, you shouldn't be doing that. That's where a lot of that confusion happens. Let's keep going now. Go to the next slide if you would. This kind of gives you a picture now. You see the Gaza Strip right there in kind of in the middle, right on the water. Mediterranean Sea, absolutely beautiful. When you get to go to Israel with this, Tel Aviv is drop dead gorgeous, right on the water. It's high. That region there, the beaches, you will say, have I died and gone to heaven here? It is just gorgeous how it's all developed, very westernized in some of these areas here. But this is what Israel is right now, and this is how it is laid out. In the northern part, up towards the top of the map, that's where Galilee is. 75% of Jesus' miracles happened up there, the Sea of Galilee. But up there, just above that, where it says Lebanon, that's where we have Hezbollah that it's attacking Israel from the north right now. They are the terrorist organization inside of Lebanon shooting to the northern part. And down here in this little Gaza Strip area is where Israel right now has been fighting Hamas. I need to state something. Israel is not fighting the Palestinian people. Please let that just be singed into your brain. Israel is not fighting Palestinians. Israel is fighting Hamas and anyone else who has radicalized and connected themselves to Hamas. That's who Israel is fighting. There are wonderful, innocent Palestinians that want nothing to do with any of this. They're angry with Hamas at some things going on. They're just not allowed to say anything. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But that is where Gaza is. And now you can go ahead and go to the next one if you would, the next slide, and I think this will wrap it up here for right now. So this is the Gaza Strip. You see Israel to the right and the Gaza Strip there to the left. Give you some nuance here. There's about a 30-mile distance of where the Gaza Strip borders Israel. 30 miles is what they share roughly, 32 miles, somewhere in there. How did the Palestinians get in Gaza? How did that happen? What in the world? Kasim, I'm doing a lot of talking. I'm going to let you just jump in here and you can kind of begin to throw some things around and we'll kind of talk on this to give some context for how we got to the stage that we're in right now.
Sure. Where do you want to start? How far back do you want to go?
Yeah. See, this guy, well, in 1732, he could take us there. We'll keep it as current as we can. We'll just talk 2005 going forward from there.
Sure. So I'm going to jump a little bit back.
Why not? Sure, go right ahead.
So, no.
It's good.
No, so what you're probably going to hear a lot, and I'm not going to go too much into detail at this moment, but a lot of people said after the attacks that we saw happen, this is awful, but Israel has occupied Gaza for 77 years and so on and so forth. So regardless of how you feel about what the situation was in Gaza, that is straight away historically incorrect. Israel had no involvement with Gaza till 1967. Gaza was controlled by Egypt. It was only after the 67 war when Israel preemptively struck, because it had the whole might of Egypt on one border and Jordan and Syria on the others, that Gaza came into Israel's control. When Israel and Egypt signed the Camp David Accords, which normalized relations between the two countries, and so during the 67 war, Israel took all of the Sinai Peninsula. It managed to conquer all of that, but for peace, Israel went, we'll give it back for relations with Egypt. That happened. Israel also went, you can have Gaza back. The Egyptians were like, no, we're good, but thank you. I have a really bad joke. Israel were like, here, free Palestine. They're like, we're good, you keep it. Right. It's been a long day. Anyway, so Israel kept control of Gaza because it had no other choice. Nobody wanted it. In 2005, Israel decided there'd been different peace talks, and during the Oslo Accords, when they decided on the two-state solution, that a Palestinian state would come into existence, there was going to be withdrawals from Gaza, and like Pastor Scott scared about the different administrative zones in the West Bank, which would also lead to independence. I'm using the term West Bank just because it's not the correct term, but it's just what is used in a lot of the documentation about the Oslo Accords. So with the Second Intifada, which happened in 2001, which saw so many suicide bombings in Israel, it was terror every day, buses being blown up. The peace talks stalled, the Oslo Accords kind of stalled, a lot of the agreements maintained, but there was nowhere to go. So Israel decided that they had to do something for peace. They had to take a bold step. So they decided that they would remove every single Israeli, every community, every soldier from Gaza. They would give Gaza essentially independence and go, this is the chance. And
Kasim, if I can interject here, when he says remove all the Jews that are living in Gaza, we're talking their homes, their farms, their schools, libraries, hospitals, malls, everything that they had built, all the infrastructure, running water, sewer, everything was developed. People were living there peacefully in communities that was going. And Israel said, we're going to give over Gaza to the Palestinians, land for peace. You say that this is how peace will come. We want peace, land for peace. And they pulled all the Jews out of their homes forcibly. I watched TV and I cried as I saw it happening when I was young, when all this happened in 2005, literally pulling them out. It was contentious all through Israel what the government was doing in trying to pursue peace, but they pulled them all out and gave it over to the Palestinians in 2005.
No, and that's an important point, because for some people, this was the only home they'd known. If they had moved there or they'd grown up there, so they were forcibly being removed for the hope of peace. And there was, I believe, the Israeli ambassador to the United States at the time wrote an op-ed which said, this is the test case for peace. You know, we're removing the synagogues, we're removing all of the communities, but we're leaving infrastructure, we're leaving greenhouses, we're leaving the water infrastructure. This is going to be an example of what is possible. So the Palestinian Authority, they took over, they called their first legislative election, I believe it was 2007, 2008.
Just after 2005, I think Fatah was
right,
voted.
Fatah were
yes.
running it, and then they had the legislative elections, which Hamas won. Fatah then decided, we see that you've won, but we're going to stay in control. And eventually that kind of boiled up and Hamas seized power. So they did win the election. So they seized power, they walked Fatah members off the top of rooftops, and since that point, Hamas has been in control of Gaza. Hamas is a terrorist group recognized by most democracies in the world. Hamas's charter says that their goal is not only to obliterate Israel, but to murder every Jew in the world.
And let me say this, I'm so glad what he just said of Hamas's goal, you can read it on the internet. Right. Here's what's wonderful about Hamas. They're honest terrorists. The problem is the world doesn't want to believe them. Their preamble states, why does Hamas exist? We exist. The state of Israel and the Jewish people will exist only until we obliterate them. Hamas, by their own statement, don't want peace. They don't want land. They want the Jews and Israel destroyed. How do you know that kind of puts a wrench in negotiations? Okay, let's keep going.
So I will add one point, maybe push back. Hamas do say they believe in peace, but that peace is with all the Jews dead and them in control. But it's a different lens.
I want a piece of you,
right,
and I'll be, yeah, exactly.
Israel in response, okay, before we talk about what Israel did, imagine your neighbor, somebody has bought the house of a neighbor who, there was tension, but now a new neighbor has moved in and is like, I want to kill you and your family and burn your house down and take it over. But we cool, right? No, like it doesn't work like that. So Israel put in a blockade because there is evidence going back decades and many examples of Iran shipping weapons to Gaza. The Karina A was one ship which the Israeli Navy intercepted, which was full of weapons. So there was a blockade. Supplies were still coming in. Humanitarian aid was still coming in. Gazans who needed hospitals in Israel were still coming in. There was a crossing which allowed humanitarian supplies and all these things. So when people say it was an open-air prison, it's just simply not true. But Hamas started firing rockets at Israel, and it started small scale and escalated and got worse, and that is what led to the development of Iron Dome. Iron Dome is an incredible, I would say, an incredible testament of the US-Israel relationship. It is an anti-missile system. So a rocket comes up from Hamas, which costs $1,000 to make. Israel shoots it out of the sky based on the radar if it's going to hit a populated area. Now, I can't remember the amount, but I think every interceptor costs $20,000. And Hamas fire a lot of rockets. So just think about that. Israel could go into Gaza and start a war very easily, but instead it is spending a lot of money to shoot rockets out of the sky because Israel knows if one of those rockets hits a civilian population, it hits an apartment building, it hits a kindergarten, the country has to go to war.
Exactly. Kasim, if I can add this, so where does, if Israel is watching the region, where does Hamas get their rockets from? I will tell you where. Hamas is literally pulling the pipes out of the ground, the infrastructure. They're shooting water pipes and sewer pipes. They're turning them into rockets. This is why they have zero control over where they go. They load them with munitions and fire them, and it's indiscriminate. Hamas has no clue where they're going to end up. This is why, is it 20% of them actually fall, and it's, I think, I don't want
450, at least 450 have fallen in Gaza in this.
So Hamas is shooting rockets in Gaza, and they're falling inside of, they just hit a hospital last week. They're hitting their own people because they have zero control. These are not smart rockets. It is sewer pipes and water pipes they're pulling out of the ground. Hamas is not doing something to build society, to help culture, to build schools, to build hospitals, to help education. They're literally ripping out of the ground what serves the Palestinian people in order to attack Israel, and that's why they have no control over where they go, and Israel then has to spend all this money destroying these homemade rockets. That's the challenge they're facing right now.
So that's essentially where we were, and there's been multiple flare-ups. Rockets have been fired at Israel, sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands. Israel will launch targeted airstrikes to neutralize Hamas rockets. The challenge that Israel faces, which is very unique to Israel, Hamas are very happy to use hospitals, UN schools to launch rockets. And there is so much evidence of it, satellite images. And that's essentially what we were seeing from 2007 up until 2 weeks ago, when Hamas came out of Gaza and launched the deadliest terror attack in Israel's history.
Very good. So, watch this. There had been good relations. If you go to Israel today, Israel is 80% Jewish and 20% Palestinian, Arab. Let's just go Arab. Christians, Druze, there's freedom of religion, there's freedom of, you can push back, you can protest. Since Israel became a nation in 1948, there have been Arab representation sitting on the parliament, on the Knesset since day one. They've had voice and involvement in all things Israel as they're working this together. So why doesn't Israel let more people in? Why is it just 80-20? Why can't it be 50-50? Because Israel's a democracy. And Israel as a land is the only place in the world that Jews are actually safe. And so Israel has to remain the Jewish state, but even trying to remain the Jewish state, they're not ostracizing people. Everybody in Israel has the same rights. Women vote, healthcare, education, protest, homosexuality is free to happen in Israel. Try that. There was a big post that hit Queers for Palestine. Great. So I'm just saying, in that capacity, go to Gaza with that sign and you get killed by Hamas. We have a culture that is screaming for something they don't even know what they're cheering for, because it's actually to their detriment. It doesn't support anything that they say that they want. Israel, why is it that the Palestinians that live in Israel don't leave Israel if it's an apartheid state and go to one of the 22 surrounding Arab countries? Why do they stay? Because they have more freedom in Israel than they do in other Arab countries. So they stay. They have the right to complain, so that they do. You can't complain about the government in Gaza because Hamas will take you out. They silence you. So these are the realities on the ground. If it's so bad, leave. No, they don't want to go across the river to Jordan. They don't want to go to Syria. They don't want to go to Lebanon. Why? Because they're freer and they have hope and they have a future that's provided for them by Israel.
Something I want to add to that. So I think it was around 2015 when they were trying to restart peace talks. An Israeli minister at the time was talking about land swaps. And that's something that's always been on the table, that certain parts of the land will be swapped to make sure that a Palestinian state is viable. And he said, look, the communities around Jerusalem, which are predominantly Arab, they will become part of a Palestinian state, and the Jewish communities will fall into Israel. And the Arabs protested. They were like, no, we're staying in Israel. We're not being part of a Palestinian state. So look, it begs the question, are things perfect? No. We live in the United States. Are things perfect? No, and I love it. Like, ask my wife, I'm the most patriotic American you'll meet. It's weird, even I know it's weird. But things aren't perfect. Israel, similarly, there are issues, but when Arabs would rather live in Israel, in a Jewish state, than in the neighboring regions, it says a lot.
Exactly. So the leader of the Palestinian Authority, his name is Mahmoud Abbas. Abbas, who the United States gives approximately 600,000, is it 600,000 a year? It was 400. I think it went to 600. I thought it's right. Let's go. We'll split the difference. $500 million a year is given to the Palestinian Authority so that they can distribute and help Palestinians. That comes from your tax dollars and mine to the Palestinians. Mahmoud Abbas, who is their official, their head, is in the 18th year of his 4-year term. Some of you, it's going to hit you when you drive home. When you go, oh my God, that he's in the 18th year of his 4-year term. There's not been any more elections. Mahmoud Abbas, no matter how many peace offers that Israel brings, he will never say yes. Because if he ever says yes, he is equally not just creating a state a state for Palestinians, he is also having to admit that Israel and the Jews have a right to exist. If he states that they have a right to exist, he'll be killed. That's not acceptable. Here's what's crazy. You got Hamas in the south. You got Hezbollah in the north. Hezbollah means party of God. So the party of God is in the north firing rockets. You have Hamas in the south. You've got Fatah in the West Bank area. You've got Iran that's funding all of this. You've got ISIS. You got all. Here's the problem. None of those terrorist groups get along. They don't like each other. The only thing they agree on is Israel cannot exist. So if you make peace with one group, that doesn't mean other groups honor it. Israel still has a battle on their hands. So the neighborhood they live in, it preempts them. The whole world looks at them and scrutinizes them because they're the only ones who are a democracy. They live inside of boundaries. They have order. They're trained, they're raised as children to love humanity, to love people. They know what it's like to be ran out of nations of the world and have to run for their life. They are for people at large. But when you begin to look at this, the reason that the whole world is coming after Israel is because nobody else can deal with Hamas. No one deals with Hezbollah. Israel's the only one that will actually talk to them, and so they catch the scrutiny from the United Nations right on down. So these are some of the issues that kind of lay a groundwork. October the 7th, a massacre hit Israel and the world. The soul of the world was fractured on October the 7th. The inhumane, barbaric, evil things that we saw take place nobody should ever see happen. Nobody. I would, as much as I disagree with people vehemently on a lot of issues, and we could even be so opposed that there is an angst, I would never wish anything to that degree, even on those people that I disagree with. That was barbaric. I'm not even going to repeat it because the videos are out there and you've heard it all mentioned, things that I have a hard time even wrapping my head around now. And to know that there are hostages that are being held by Hamas in Gaza right now that survived the Holocaust, but now they are once again dealing with things in Gaza. It sickens me on so many levels. The children, you've seen it all. This is where we settle right now. And Israel has declared, they're lined up. They've called up hundreds of thousands in the military. They're going into, and the goal right now, the stated goal by the state of Israel is they're going to go into Gaza, and they're not going to put up with Hamas anymore. They have been dealing with that attack since 2007 over and over and over. Indiscriminate rocket attacks, bombings, all things. They said, finally, this is enough. We're going to go in. Why have they not done it before? Because whenever these conflicts hit, the world starts screaming, stop. It's disproportionate. You can't be doing this to them. It's outrageous. People start seeing civilians dying, which is tragic on every level. We don't want to see any Palestinians dying. But Israel is not fighting Palestinians. They're fighting the Hamas. And Hamas is using the civilians as human shields to protect their rockets. They put people in front of them knowing that's why they are shooting from schools, from apartment buildings, from mosques, from hospitals. They're doing this because they know Israel is not going to target those places. Did you see the video where Israel went and dropped millions of leaflets, flyers all over Gaza, announcing the next building they're about to hit? Which military in the world does that, folks? We're hitting this building on this day. Get out. Please leave. Go. They drop millions of leaflets, millions of flyers. I'm going to show you a video in a second. Like, oh my God, not our report, not a Jewish report. Palestinians inside Gaza who can't be seen. They can't let their face out. But this is what they're saying is going on inside of Gaza. This is what Israel is doing. Why would they do that? To get the civilians out. Do you know in 2009, a study was done by a gentleman that was a part of the British armies named Colonel Kemp. Colonel Kemp went and he reported at the United Nations that after studying warfare history, that Israel is the most moral army since they've been able to study military warfare, the most moral army in the world today. What makes them that? How do they deduce that? They have the fewest civilian casualties during wartime than any army, including the United States of America. The most moral. So, ladies and gentlemen, if Israel was immoral, they could carpet bomb Gaza. If they were just destroy the place. If that's what they were doing. No, it's with precision that they are trying to take this a step at a time and move evil out of Gaza and liberate Gaza from Hamas. That's what we're doing here. So this is what's on the landscape and what we're seeing. And Israel going in, it's going to be a difficult scenario. We're going to see some things coming out that's just tragic, and we hate that, and Israel hates that. But I want you to know where the heart and here's what I'm going to say, and then we're going to open up for questions. So if you guys will get ready to begin to take questions. The challenge that we're dealing with right now is our culture is moralizing both sides, and they're saying that the Israeli Defense Force and Hamas both are standing on the same moral platform, and what Israel is doing is just as bad as what Hamas is doing, and that's why they're saying just stop, shut it down, quit. Israel did that for the past several years, and they keep getting attacked. Israel said enough is enough. It's time to go take out the enemy, and so that's what's going on right now. Now, I want to say this. If you have a question tonight, please ask it. There's not going to be this massive wave of comeback. We welcome conversation in this room. So every question is wide open. Please ask it, because if you're going to ask it and 7 other people had the same question, they weren't willing to raise their hand and ask the question. So please, what questions do you have that you would like to pose that we can begin to speak to, that would give perspective as to what's going on in this conflict? Be glad to speak to that. Anybody, right here in the front. We got several.
Okay, this one might need like a whole maybe Sunday service. So I just want to know, I'm curious, like biblically, like I'm aware, Jesus says that we don't know when exactly he's coming back, but we do have the clues to see when that time is near. So is this prophetic? If so, kind of like, where are we, biblically speaking?
Yeah.
How close are we?
It's a great
'Cause I'm
question.
ready.
No, it's a great question. And I will say this. So you popped the cork. I'm going there this Sunday. I'm going there this Sunday, all right? So there you have it. We finished our generosity series. It's over. We're diving into this right now. So we're going to talk about it. And there's specific, there's answers. Everything that happens with Israel is always prophetic, or his people. And it speaks to us in that capacity. And so we're going to begin to address those things. And if you'll please let me hold my notes until Sunday. I don't want to spit my whole message out now. But it's a great question, and I appreciate you asking it. So, yes, it does matter, and we need to look at it from a biblical perspective. There's answers there, whether biblical, political, historical, moral. We can go at any angle. But it's a great question, and we need to speak to it. We're going to this Sunday. Yes, thank you.
Got another question over here, Pastor?
Yes,
Right?
please.
Sorry.
Oh,
I'm on
okay,
knee.
thank you. Where are you? Yeah.
Yes, I want to thank you for tonight for this. First, I want to say there's some good news today. 2 Israeli women were released,
Yes.
87 and 80 years old,
Yes.
who probably went through this long, long time ago. And today is the 40th anniversary of the Beirut bombings.
Right.
2 questions tied into one. With all the protesting going on throughout the country, which is fine as long as it stays, safe and sound. I watch probably too much media, politically, but that's what I do, unfortunately. But so what's really bothersome, and my question is, in the prestigious colleges in the country, I'm from New York, Columbia University, NYU, and they've asking these questions to the protesters covering for Palestine. Why is it that you're so mad at Israel? Do you not understand what happened with the beheading of children? And they all said to a person, it's nonsense. I want to see the videos. I want to see, and then you have professors even pushing this.
Right.
At these, so my question is the ideology, where is that coming from that it's that bad that you have 19-year-olds saying it's a lie?
Right.
when
That's a
it's
great
all
question. It's a great
over?
question. Kasim.
Yeah, I can start with that. So, Joseph Goebbels was the head of Nazi propaganda. Okay, he was responsible for all of the anti-Semitism, which became part and parcel of German society. And he has a quote attributed to him where he says, "If you repeat the same lie over and over again, it becomes the truth." And essentially, that's what it's become. And we look at these educational institutions as a place of learning. Sadly, they become places of indoctrination. And if you look at, so there's multiple elements to it, and I will try and concentrate on a few things. If you look at a lot of the Middle East studies departments in a lot of universities, they're funded by Arab governments. With that comes money, but also ideology and certain caveats. And it's impossible to know, it's not impossible, but there isn't the objectivity in education that there used to be. There isn't, let's look at this subject and let's look at it from all angles. And I'll give you an example which blew my mind. So at the University of South Florida in Tampa, the former, I think he was the Dean of the Middle East Studies, or he was very high up in the program a number of years ago, he left his job. Do you know what his next job was? The head of Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza. So he left his job at a university in America to take over one of the most dangerous terrorist organizations in the world. So when you have that person teaching you, and here's the thing, if this was a university campus and you're all students, you're freshmen, and I'm your professor and telling you that Israel is evil, Israel is doing all these evil things, you're going to believe me. Like, who is going to challenge their professor as a freshman? And that's one of the things that we failed. This is where I kind of look at it objectively as someone who lived in Britain and Canada. We've failed in America. We've expected educational institutions to do the job of parents. We've expected educational institutions in good faith to teach children critical thinking and all these things. Instead, they've indoctrinated them And when you keep telling the same lie, it creates hatred. And that's one of the scariest things with these protests. There's so much anger and so much hate, it's having real world consequences. My dear friend Irving Roth, who passed away, he would always say the Holocaust didn't start in the gas chambers, it started with words. So.
No, it's so good. And it started with words, but it was successful because of a lack of words. We didn't speak up. Words have to be opposed. So watch this. To that point, this is what breaks my heart about the Palestinian scenario, where if you and I were raised and only taught hateful things about those people, that's all we would know. They teach children today, here's how they will do math. I've seen this. Out of their own teaching. You have 9 Jews, you stab and kill 4, how many are left? This is how 6 and 7-year-olds are growing up. They have literally, instead of pin the tail on the donkey, stab the Jew. This is what their children are taught. Ladies and gentlemen, these children have no other ability, no opportunity to think outside of that because their culture is swallowed up in that. How did they get here? Because their leaders are ripping off the people. All the monies that are being sent is not reaching them. The United States, President Biden, bless his heart, sending $100 million into Gaza. Palestinian Authority, Hamas is the ruling agency. That money is never going to get to the Palestinians. Do they need the help? Of course they need the assistance. But Hamas is controlling. It's going to go to the upper echelon. They get richer and richer. And this is why Hamas leadership is not in Gaza. They're in Qatar. They're standing outside of it and they're giving orders inside. People inside are dying. The bombing is going on. They're sitting in the Four Seasons sipping champagne, watching it on TV like we are. They're not even there. This is so when you've got generations, 3, 4 generations, and this is all they're learning, I understand why they're so angry, because their leadership is not providing health care, education, a future, a hope for more, opportunity to start business, speak out, learn to use your voice, critical thing. They don't get this opportunity and they're angry. And when your leaders say you should be angry, it's their fault. That's all you know, and so you respond in kind. This is what is being faced with there in that region. So it's extremely complicated in that sense. But when you begin to realize the dialogue on both sides, it begins to really, well, it is really black and white. Israeli children are being raised tikkun olam. We heal the world. We help the world. 214 Nobel Peace Prize winners have come out of Israel. Israel has 0.2% of the global population, yet 20% of Nobel Peace Prizes are Jewish because they're inventing things to help the world. They're the first to respond in disaster. They're the first to respond in catastrophe. They're the first to Mexico whenever the earthquakes hit to try to help find people that are buried. They showed up in Turkey. They're doing everything they can to help even countries that don't like them. One of the top leaders of Hamas, one of his family members in Gaza was hurt, and they opened the borders and brought his family to a hospital in southern Israel, was treated and sent back into Gaza. You go to the hospitals in Israel, you've got Jews, Palestinian, Christian, Arab. There's doctors, and they're all working. It's like the United Nations doing life together, and you don't get preferential treatment if you're Jewish. They triage the situation. Who's hurt the worst? They get preferential treatment. This is a reality in Israel. And when you've been there and you've seen it, you understand what's going on, not what the media says. It's a different ballgame. Very good. Yes?
Hi, I'm not very well educated in this topic,
Yeah.
but I hear a lot from people that are kind of well educated in this topic that some of this is also America's fault for taking out the troops that they had that were protecting or there. Do you think that America has kind of not hurt but damaged them from taking out the troops and giving financial aid to everyone else and also surrounding areas?
I will say this, and Kasim, please jump in here. So the United States has never been in Israel. In fact, I want everyone to know Israel is not asking the U.S. to be involved in anything going on. They say, we will fight our wars. You don't need U.S. blood here on this soil. They don't want that. What they're talking about, if I'm talking about the same scenario, is when President Biden pulled all of our troops out of Afghanistan and left billions of dollars of U.S. military equipment behind. That equipment being used against Israel now. I'm told, I don't know this, that some of that equipment has actually shown up and been seen in this massacre that just took place. There was some of that equipment was identified. There was U.S. equipment there. Now, I can't verify that, but that's what I've been told. So there's a lot of that, and then President Biden just the United States sent $6 billion to Iran. Iran is the #1 state sponsor of terrorism globally. And so when the sanctions were lifted off and they were given the ability to sell millions of barrels of oil, China's jumped in. Their economy is robust again. They've got finances. They're the one that's funding Hamas. They're the one that's funding Hezbollah. They are fully engaged in the support of all of this going on. So we have to really be careful in the sense of what we do, and policy matters. There's consequences for all these things. And so I can't state this happened because of that, that did this, I don't know, but all I know is when you put money in terrorist hands, they usually don't use it well. That's my opinion.
No, I would agree. And I think there's been a wider issue with the United States in the last, probably going even further back, to 12 years, where we've almost been in retreat from the world. And just the way the world works, when you are the superpower and you retreat, somebody's going to fill that vacuum. And sadly, it's being filled by Russia, who are in Syria. It's being filled by Iran, who are in Syria, Lebanon, all over. So it's a scenario where it's impossible to know, because hindsight's a great thing. But American weakness, in my opinion, American weakness makes the world a less safe place for democracies and free countries.
Agreed.
Got you back here in the back, Pastor Scott.
Please.
Thank you, Kazim, for your time and education, informing us, as well as you, Pastor Scott. Is this the beginning of the Psalm 83 war leading into the Ezekiel 38-39 as well? I know you've elaborated on China as well as Russia's deal in all this, and will this lead up to World War III as well? As I just seen the drones attack the American troops in Syria as well. I mean, being that keeps elaborating to more and more and more and more.
A great question, Ryan. And here's what's really interesting. I think I would fall back on what Kasim says. I've never been the big prophecy guy, but I do enjoy looking backwards, going and say, yep, that's what the Bible meant right there. Looking backwards is a lot better than looking forward, in my opinion. However, we do see some escalation biblically, that these things are going to happen, and when you see these things happening, you begin to lift your head and look. I do believe all of this is very much headed towards a World War III scenario. I believe that personally. I'm not signing off on it and take it to the bank. I believe we're headed there because Jesus said, when you see these things, wars, rumors of wars, all this breaking loose, we're headed to a time. And again, I'm going to address some of these things on Sunday morning to begin to lay out this scope of time frame that I see building. I'm not the guy who will tell you this is what's going to happen definitively and this. There's guys much smarter than I in that, and go listen to them. You're going to find contradiction in them, but they got some good stuff, and lean into it. But it's interesting to look at and to see that things on the world stage are ramping up, and it's headed towards what we would call the rapture of the church, in my opinion, that there is going to be that. Now, there are different theological ideas on that as well. But I believe that we're moving closer and closer to that time because we're watching many of these pieces begin to align. And Israel is just, they are at the center of everything that happens on God's timeline. And so when things begin to happen with Israel, we have to raise our head and begin to look and realize we're in those moments. So very much the escalation in there right now, the war and rumors of wars, what's going on with Russia right now, what's going on with China right now, how Iran is involved, all of these things are building. This whirlwind is starting to pick up. And I believe we're watching some things that are going to be very, very fast escalating in this. I do. Yes.
Yeah. First, I just want to thank you guys for this very interesting discussion. So thank you so much for this platform and the information you're putting out. So twofold, what do you think that, we could do to, I guess, assist? And one thing that comes to mind is, I think, maybe educate kind of what you're doing here now. And you mentioned this gentleman's presence, website, and so forth. So I hope at some point we get that so that we can, kind of follow along and continue to educate ourselves. And possibly there may be some other resources that you might recommend. So that's...
No, thank you so much. That's phenomenal. And it's so important because I'm still learning. I'm still growing. Like there's no one that has it all together, right? I would say number one, CUFI.org. Christians United for Israel.org. There's a resource page loaded with information that is great quality information that you can really digest. CUFI does not just throw anything on there that looks and sounds good for Israel. It's vetted, it's looked at, it's qualified. You can find spew and craziness on every side of this argument. And so making sure that it's accurate historically and not just emotionally loaded is really important. So CUFI.org. I will say again, Kasim's his personal social media, as well as what he does for CUFI on all of that, is going to continue. But you're exactly right. Education, education, education. We've got to learn because you can't be deceived if you know. And if you don't know, we believe a lie. And it's really sad to build your life on a lie when actually truth was there. So there's extra work that we're required to do to get involved and pursue, and there's answers there. But having conversations, learning, talking to people that don't think the way that you do. You know, it's okay to disagree with people and still love them. You know, we can still do that in this world today. Yes, we can. And we need to have those conversations. That's one of the things I love about Free Life Chapel. If you didn't know, we're not a white church. We're not just a brown church, not just a black church. It's just church.
Yes, sir.
We're family. We're doing life together. So it's important that we have these different perspectives and we hear and we learn from each other. Really important. So thanks for bringing that up.
Got
Very
you
good
right
point.
here, Pastor Scott.
Yes.
So he actually asked half of my question, but first I wanted to say thank you to both of you for your bravery. I do have a business associate who is from Pakistan, and I have a deep admiration for him. He has strong views that are opposite mine, and I'm nervous about talking about this subject with him, and the fact that you two are on an international platform doing it speaks of your bravery, so thank you for that. What advice would you give me as an American Christian to speak with somebody from Pakistan who practices Islam as their religion, and do you have any resources available that I would be able to better equip myself to have a peaceful conversation and out of love?
Okay, it's a great question. Firstly, I would say Pakistanis are very difficult to have conversations with. That's my wife. We're impassioned about everything. You know, the longer I've lived in America, I'm like, man, brown people are all the same. We're just like different flags, but we're always late. We're always argumentative. Like, you can probably cut that part out. But to actually answer your question, so I think there's a number of things. Firstly, from a Christian perspective, approach it with love. You know, because everyone right now is looking for a fight. And the other thing which I think is really key, and like I don't know this person, so I can't talk definitively. For me, something that really resonated. So I grew up, my family are Pakistani, obviously, and we were very, like even now, like Pakistan is part of who I am. It's part of my identity, and I have so much admiration for Pakistan's founding. And what resonated for me early on, because my initial support for Israel had nothing to do with my faith. It was completely from a secular perspective. And I saw the parallels. In 1940, the Muslims of India basically went, okay, when the British leave, we're going to be a minority in a Hindu majority. We're not going to be safe. We need a home of our own. And Israel essentially was the Jewish people going, for centuries we've not been safe. Don't we deserve our own home in the place that is our home? So I think that parallel is really important.
So good.
I think the other thing is, one of the things I do when I speak, especially to hostile, is like, ask questions. Ask, but why?
Yes.
But why do you believe that? What? And look, as a Christian, as a human being, you have to have empathy for where people are approaching from. Because similarly, look, I grew up in England. I went to state schools, but I was brainwashed because I was seeing one narrative and it was very black and white. And look, I always think express like genuine empathy for the Palestinians and ultimately go, look, at the end of the day, this isn't happening because Israel has decided that it wants to kill innocent people. This was a war that was forced on them. Like, nobody wants this. In the same way, when we look at the Second World War, the innocent German citizens in Dresden or wherever who were killed in the Allied fire bombings of those cities, it happened in 1945. No one from there till this day has gone, well, that was America and Britain's fault. No, it was the Nazis' fault, because they started a war and put these people in harm's way. So I think context is important, but like to condense it to a few bullet points, I think just go in there with a loving mindset, be inquisitive in not a hostile way, and find something that relates. And like for me, as somebody from a Pakistani heritage, that parallel really related to me, because it's like, if you're questioning Israel's existence, you can question, and I said this to my wife recently, we were having a conversation. It's a lot of fun at our house at the moment. I was like, if somebody can say that Israel has no right to exist, then what right does Pakistan have to exist? Like, Pakistan's a mess, and I accept that, but it's still the place that gave my grandparents a safe haven. So if you can dismiss a country or a place where the Jewish people have had a presence for thousands of years, and Pakistan, the Muslims only got to South Asia in like the 1400s, so then what right do we have? So I think that resonates, and if you need more tips, let Pastor Scott know, text me, and I'm happy to help in any way I can.
I think you actually nailed it, because with people that we have opposing views, I try to find a place of agreement to start. And the one thing I'll agree on is, I am so sorry for what you've been through. I hurt with you. I'm sorry. That's horrible. That's terrible. And from there, and I think it's brilliant what you said, I think we learn more from questions than giving answers. Begin to ask questions, hear someone's heart, and people will educate you based on their questions. Then it gives you a list of things to go study and to look at. So I think that's a great way to, if you would, ease into those conversations, because the one thing you don't want to do is just bang, and all of a sudden now we're just opposed and we're not going anywhere. We need more conversing in our nation. I want to do this real quickly. I want to go to you in the media booth, video number 2, if you would, video number 2. This is a Palestinian talking out of Gaza. If you would put that up, please.
وجهت إسرائيل الناس في القطاع وأعطتهم تحذيرات بالمغادرة، وحكت حماس إنه ما يتحركوا من بيوتهم على أساس إنه مش حقيقي وخليكم ببيوتكم. شو بتعتقد كمان، شو بتقدر تعلق على هالموضوع؟
في أحد الأصدقاء اللي تواصل معي يعني قبل 3 أيام حكى لي بالحرف الواحد، إحنا أجانا تهديد، خفنا على حياتنا، خفنا على حياة أطفالنا، اضطرينا إنه نطلع لأنه هذا الأمر في حياة ما في مزح. وصلنا لمنطقة معينة، هاي المنطقة كان فيها أحد عناصر حماس بالزي المدني، أوقفوا سياراتنا، أخذوا المفاتيح السيارات، أخذوا بطاقات الهوية تبعتنا، أمرونا بالرجوع بشكل مباشر إلى أماكن سكننا مرة أخرى. فأنت يعني كأنك يعني بتزج بهذا المواطن إلى الموت.
The Center for Peace Communications is a great Instagram page to follow. This is a Palestinian inside of inside of Gaza, that was confronted by Hamas. Israel dropped the leaflet, said, please get out, go to the southern part of Gaza, we're coming in. They attempted to do so. Hamas stopped them, took their IDs, took their keys, and sent them back into their homes. You're not leaving, because they know Israel's not going to indiscriminately target places where civilians still are. However, it happens. In fact, I want to give you a picture as to some of the nuance, because you're going to be hearing of this happen. I'm just telling you now. It's already happened in other conflicts, but it's going to happen in this. There's going to be pictures of Israel hitting a building and destroying a building. But I've watched this happen on video, where Israel will hit a building and the explosion hits, and then 3, 4, or 5 blocks away you see subsequent boom, 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 boom. Those are not Israeli rockets. Israel fired one rocket to the target that they knew citizens were not in. But because of the 30+ miles of tunnels that Hamas has dug under Gaza to move their munitions and to move their terrorists, there will that explosion will hit there, but then it will send ricochet explosions of hitting other munitions under a school, under a hospital. It travels those tunnels, and it sets off those that Israel wasn't aware of where those munitions were, didn't know that that building was linked with other places. And so you have collateral damage happening that Israel did not initiate. Do you follow what I'm saying? Those things surprise Israel when those things hit as much as it does everybody else. And then you have civilians dying. And so that is where Israel is doing all of their intelligence. Did you notice they're not rushing into Gaza right now? Everyone understand that? They're sitting back and they're waiting. They're getting all intelligence put together. They are working over the top right now to make sure there's precision and on point, because if they wanted to protect the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, and protect Israel, you could just go carpet bomb the place. They have that capacity. They refuse to do it. They put their own lives on the line to protect the lives of the Palestinians. This is what's happening in Gaza.
Just to add on to that, it's impossible to really picture the scenario within Gaza, because it's literally you have a city under the city of tunnels that Hamas has created. And we're not talking, like if you've ever seen images of these tunnels, they're very sophisticated. They have communication lines, they have lighting and everything. So if the IDF wanted to essentially because it's not a safe environment. I was talking to a colleague yesterday, and essentially when the IDF goes into Gaza, it will be like a mixture of the very worst of Vietnam, Fallujah, and Beirut, because there are threats everywhere. And sadly, IDF personnel are going to get ambushed. It's impossible not. If they wanted the safe route, and we've seen that done in Kosovo, NATO just bombed the Serbian targets for weeks and weeks and weeks and never sent a single ground troop in. It's been done historically. But Israel know the cost of human life in doing that would be catastrophic. And when you have rockets under buildings, like Pastor Scott said, it's impossible. You may hit a Hamas base and take out 4 blocks because you have no idea what's going on underneath. And it's very difficult to find that intelligence because Hamas is such a Gaza is such a closed society. The risk of Hamas capturing you is awful. Like before this war happened, there have been multiple videos of Hamas, and this is one of the truly disgusting things about Hamas and people who are supporting them in the West. Hamas do not hide their crimes. Historically, criminals, genocidal maniacs have tried to hide their crimes. Even the Nazis tried to hide their crimes. Hamas live streamed them and put them out themselves. And there's multiple instances when they've tortured and killed people in Gaza, claiming that they were collaborating with Israel, and dragged their bodies through the streets. So Israel is having to really rely on signals intelligence and things like that, because the human intelligence, which tells you what's happening on the ground, just isn't that available. I'm sure there is to some extent, but it's a dangerous mix that the IDF is sending its troops into. And just another example of that, during the Second Intifada, when Israel went into Jenin, they captured a Hamas terrorist, and in his interrogation, he said it was the best day of our lives. Because they came into Jenin, it was an urban area, it was like shooting somebody at a carnival, because it was so easy to pick them off. And Israel is, at some point, going to walk into that, but 10 times worse. And they don't have to. They are making a choice because it is the safest way of protecting as many civilians as possible.
And it's the barbaric actions of these Hamas inhumane, evil. The word says in Isaiah 5, woe to those who call good evil and evil good. Well, when would they do that? Well, her name is Ilhan Omar. Her name is Rashida Tlaib. Her name is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Her name is, these are our sitting U.S. congresswomen who are spewing hatred, and they're stirring this in the young generation. And they're giving them this thing to go, Cori Bush. They all of a sudden have this right that they're running with, and they're empowering this. I want you to understand, standing with Israel is a bipartisan, unified stance. The United States Democrat, Republican has stood with Israel. We have these outliers. They're not speaking for all Democrats. They're speaking for themselves in this. But listen, those voices are dangerous when they get a platform and they speak out. This is why we have to speak back against the vile, inhumane leadership of these ladies and what they're doing right now. It's out of order. It's anti-Bible. It's anti-God. It's anti-America. It's anti-Israel. God bless you.
I'm going to add one thing to that. So nobody get angry at me because I'm a green card holder, so can't vote. So I'm neutral in this. And the past is the past, but I have to commend President Biden for how he has stood with Israel in the last 2 weeks. Shoulder to shoulder. He was one of the first leaders there during the war. He has sent U.S. warships to the region to send a message to Iran. He has ensured that Israel is getting what it needs. And credit where credit's due. So I said to my wife, I was like, I have never been prouder to be an American, almost. I count myself as American. Whether you like it or not, you're stuck with me. But no, I said I've never been proud to be an American because we did the right thing and we're doing the right thing. And that means a lot because when America makes a decision, the world follows. We are still the superpower.
This is the division going on inside of politics right now, and that's why we can't let it become a political issue in that capacity. Very good. Another question or two, and we just got a couple, like 5 minutes left.
Ramona's in the back left.
Yes.
Hi. Thank you for taking your personal time with your family to share this with us. My question is, because you do travel and you're probably well known and you do speak, do you worry about your own safety? How do you protect yourself and your family?
It's Florida. We're all different in Florida. Like genuinely, people who make threats, they're trying to terrorize you, they're trying to make you stop doing your life normally. And I was in Texas yesterday for an event at Cornerstone, and I said to one of my colleagues, I was like, I see these people protesting and getting hostile and all these things. They don't know how Florida and Texas roll, because we're different. We're not easily intimidated. Like, we're different. So I'm Florida now. Like, that's what it is.
It's a great question. This is nothing new for Kasim. You need to know that he went and he stood and he told his story before the United Nations. I'm not sure if I shared that with you. So he's been standing up, standing out, standing boldly in this for quite some time now. But yes, to that point, it's a great question. Good.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So there was word that there were 2 Hamas leaders that were taken out. How significant is that? And the other thing is, the picture that went out about the covert IDF guys, do you know any steps that the Israeli leadership would have done to try to keep them safe?
I'm not familiar with
The picture that went out with Biden and the covert leaders, the undercover guys, that they was released and it shouldn't have been?
Yes. I don't know any ramifications of that. They are special forces, and their pictures, their faces were shown inside of that, which never should have been sent out, obviously. I don't know that there's been any ramifications of that. I haven't heard anything, Kasim. I don't know if you have. Or
No, I mean, it was a massive blunder who was responsible, and it potentially has put those... Part of being, we have somebody who was in the Special Forces who works at Kufi, retired. Part of what allows them to operate is nobody knows who they are. So again, I don't know who was behind it. I'm sure there will be some ramifications at some point, but right now I've not heard anything. And to your first point, Israel has made it clear the mission, their war is not against Gaza or the Palestinian people, it's against Hamas. And they will hunt down Hamas wherever they are. Like, they've made it very clear, like, they're done. They've tried to accommodate Hamas, they've tried to have some sort of status quo. And we've seen, I think now, I read today, Israel has taken out at least 5 top leaders of Hamas. Like, and that's what you do. You have to cut the head off the snake, leaderless, and then that's how you fight evil. Like, we live in a world where we don't want to call evil evil, and we try and find a way to get along, and that's a good thing. But when you're dealing with something like Hamas, there's no middle ground you can meet them. When someone is saying, I want you dead, and anybody like you, where are you meant to meet? And Israel has made a choice that it's done. Hamas's time is up. So it's incredibly significant because it's sending a message. And that is, when fighting terrorism, you have to send a clear message that whoever you are, however high up you are, you're not safe. And Israel is doing that loud and clear at this moment.
Gentlemen in the booth, the media booth, would you pull up picture number 3? Would you mind doing that? Judea, Samaria, West Bank. So yeah, so you see the Dead Sea right in the middle of the map. You go right on up. It's the Jordan River running all the way up to where it goes to the Sea of Galilee. You see that? You'll hear a chant quite often utilized, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. From the river to the sea. They're talking about from the Jordan River all the way to the Mediterranean. Israel will be destroyed. We will take over. That's what they're chanting. That's what's being chanted in New York. That's what's being chanted it was chanted in Tampa last weekend. This is what's going on from the river to the sea. When you hear that phrase, that's what it's talking about, the total annihilation of the Jewish people so they can actually take over all that land. Let me remind you something. There's not a land issue. Israel is 1/600th the size of the Arab nations. 1/600th. The Arab nations don't need more land to handle the people. This is very interesting because all the refugees, Palestinian refugees inside of Gaza, there's been a debate. Should the U.S. bring them here? Should we give refugees out of Palestine, out of Gaza, safe way to come to the United States and be here? And there's been a lot of pushback. The better question is not should we do it, why is Egypt and Jordan not taking them in? And the fact is, Jordan said unequivocally, no, they're not coming in here. Number one, Jordan doesn't know who's coming into their borders. They don't want radicalization ideas coming into their borders. They don't know who's involved in that. And the other idea is they want to continue to keep the pressure on Israel because if you keep a crisis, a Palestinian refugee crisis ongoing, it's more global propaganda against Israel to stop bombing, get out of Gaza. You're hurting these people if they can keep them locked in. I think Egypt has now opened the borders, and I think they're taking some now. But it's interesting that the Arab nations are not running to take care of their own. That's a conscious decision.
There's a really important point you raised I want to touch on very quickly. So when we say the word refugee, for every single refugee crisis since the UN was established in 1945, up until today, there is one rule for every single refugee. The Palestinians are the only group who have a separate rule in what governs refugee status for them. So my family came as immigrants, but say I was a refugee from Pakistan, okay? I come to England, I'm a refugee, and then eventually I become a British citizen. I'm no longer a refugee. If you're a Palestinian and you are the descendant of a male Palestinian, even if you were born in America, you are still considered a refugee, even if you're an American citizen. Like, what are the names? Bella Hadid is considered a refugee under the guidelines used by the organization who administers the Palestinian refugees, UNRWA. Again, every single refugee, Syria, Ethiopia, Darfur, throughout human history, every refugee crisis has one body, the United Nations Human Refugee Council. The Palestinians have their own separate organization. And the very definition of it is completely different from everyone else. So even when, by internationally recognized UN terms, its own organization recognized that you're no longer a refugee because you're a citizen, it doesn't apply to the Palestinians. So when people say there's millions of refugees, not really. There are refugees from 1948. I can accept that. Even 1967. But that's less than 1 million. Like last time I did a report on this for work, I think it was around 400,000. But now there's millions of refugees based on this flawed definition. And this is the thing. Like I am a Zionist, I am pro-Israel. But ultimately it comes down to this. I'm pro-truth. And you can't have peace, because we all want peace ultimately. You can't have peace if your narrative is based on lies. If you're going, you are completely to blame, when it's not factual, you're not going to have peace. And that's one of the biggest problems we have. When people are chanting in the streets in Tampa or Toronto or wherever, ultimately they're not thinking about peace. They're not even pro-Palestinian. They're anti-Israel. They're not looking for a solution for the Palestinian people. They're not speaking out against Hamas, which has brutalized their own people. Their issue is the very existence of Israel, like Pastor Scott said, from the river to the sea. And when people say it's about the land that we were kicked out of, if it was, you'd also want what is Jordan also, because that was part of the British mandate. But Britain gave it to the Jordanian, well, what became the Jordanian monarchy, the Hashemite family. So it's not even that. The only land that they're obsessed is where the Jews are. I mean, it's bizarre.
It's very nuanced in that capacity, and without going down this road, you can Google this and study it for yourself. This is why we're also in the scenario where Israel has been the Abraham Accords, where there has been some peace between Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates. They're talking and they're connecting to where maybe exchange embassies, having flights going from one country to another, normalizing relations so that we're all coming together, truly seeking peace. But Iran doesn't want anything to do with that and wants to interrupt and to destroy that peace talk. They've got to break that down. And without getting into all this, you've got an internal battle between Shiites and Sunnis that are going on in that capacity. That's inside the Muslim world. Shiites are in Iran. The Sunnis are there in Saudi Arabia. And so Saudi Arabia doesn't want Iran getting a nuclear weapon because they have infighting going on. And so in that capacity, it becomes a whole different ballgame. So there's a lot of pieces going on, but ultimately what we're boiling this down to, we're going to begin to wrap this up right here. What we're dealing with is you've got Israel, who truly has been seeking peace on multiple occasions. It's always been shut down, starting from day one. 1947, Israel became a nation in 1948. In 1947, there was a plan laid out by the Brits, and they said this: we're going to parse this land off, and the Palestinians will have a state, and Israel will have a state. Israel said immediately, yes, let's do it. Two-state solution, we'll do it. The Arabs immediately rejected it. No. That was in 47. Israel declared their independence in 48. On May the 14th, 1948, Israel became a nation. On May the 15th, they were attacked by all 5 Arab nations that surround them. They've been fighting battles ever since. 5 major times, if not 6, there have been massive peace proposals. Let's sit down, let's talk. One of the last times, 98% of everything that they asked for, the Arabs asked for concerning land, which included East Jerusalem, was offered to them by Israel, and they turned it down. Why? Because if you say yes, you also are admitting that Israel has the right to exist, and we can't do that. It's never been about peace. It's been about destroying the nation of Israel, the Jewish people, displacing them and taking over. So these are the pieces we're dealing with. Israel, are they perfect? Absolutely not. Do we worship Israel? Absolutely not. They're as screwed up as America is. They have as many crazy ideas, and their government needs things going on just like ours does, but it is a true democracy in the Middle East. And if the rest of the Arab world would stop trying to annihilate Israel and start emulating Israel, we would begin to see some peace and some normalization in that region there. Some want that. We're praying that we're actually going to get there. But one of the first steps towards a true peace process is uprooting Hamas outside of Gaza, because it will never go beyond that. The Palestinians don't have a voice until Hamas goes, because Hamas is doing all the talking for them. We've got to see some things come together. Kasim, any other thoughts that you would share as we're closing tonight, as we begin to wrap this up?
I think we've covered everything, really. I would just say, don't take things you read about Israel at face value. Sadly, things are so skewed, like the hospital situation. Within minutes of the hospital being bombed, news sites from the New York Times to CNN were saying Israel had struck it. And only today are they now saying, we relied too heavily on Hamas for our information. It's like, could you imagine the New York Times going, we kind of relied way too much on ISIS for casualty information. And so when people say the health ministry in Gaza, it's Hamas, because they control the Gaza Strip. So you've got to always dig behind the headlines. Also, look, I hate using this sort of language, but it's reality. We are engaged in an information war. People are openly spreading lies and spreading hatred. The only way that you can fight that effectively is, 1, get the right information, be knowledgeable. You can't learn everything. 2, speak from your own experience. And 3, this is really important, no matter how much you want to slap the stupid out of people, you're a Christian, and remember that.
That's the best thing said all night right there. That applies to a lot of scenarios, not just this one. I will say this as well, and I want to just go ahead and just go here. I want to say thank you to the entire Free Life Chapel staff working today to put all of this together to make it happen. It was last minute. They canceled all kinds of things. Thank you. I want to also say thank you to Kasim and Cheyenne. Thank you for coming over. They just landed on an airplane, got home, and just drove here from St. Pete, an hour and 45, 2 hours. I mean, they've been living on the interstate. Yeah, we can stand. We can stand. We're going to wrap this up tonight. Here's what I would share with you. The one closing thought I would share is the next several days are going to be rough. The next few weeks are going to be rough in the media. what you're going to see happening in Gaza is not going to be pretty. What we need to do is do our best to keep the pressure off of Israel and let them do what they need to do to take the head off of this evil of the world, not just their enemy. Can I remind you, Hamas doesn't pull any punches, and they're very plain, just as Iran, first Israel, then America. Watch the news of what's going on our southern border right now and who's coming across. Ladies and gentlemen, you want to read something that might keep you up tonight? Google this. The Hamas network that was just put out by George Mason University, just printed a few months ago, and show you where Hamas is presently holding conventions in America, in our hotels. And they are working to develop and push this narrative. They are working from the ground up. The people we've been seeing protesting vehemently, some of those folks came across the border and they're planted to help make this happen. This is not just people who are just buying into ideology. This is in America. I'm not being an alarmist. It's here. It's not coming. It's here. So people can look and just kind of turn a blind eye to all that. And I'm telling you right now, as soon as you turn a blind eye to that, you're turning a blind eye to what's happening around us right now. The truth is, the Israeli Defense Force is doing the world a favor. They're doing America a favor by destroying Hamas. Doesn't mean it's over. There's more to come. We didn't even talk about the Muslim Brotherhood tonight. We didn't even go there wearing their Armani suits and walking the halls of the Pentagon right now. This is in America right now. This is here, but this is only one front of it. We need to be aware. We need to read. We need to be educated. We need to pray. We Christians, we pray, don't we? Yes. And we speak truth in love, but we speak truth nonetheless. We stand and we speak back. So read, research. CUFI has so much. You want to do something that you can activate your support? Go to CUFI, join CUFI, become a member. Join the 10 plus million members that are pushing this forward to stand, be educated, learn, grow. You're welcomed into conference calls where some of the top Israeli diplomats are talking to us, telling us what's going on the ground before it ever hits the news cycles. This is who CUFI is, moving this forward. And so be educated. It's very, very important. But pray, pray, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Father, tonight we thank you that you love us. We thank you for the opportunity that we have to stand on what you call truth and what we've learned to build our lives on, and we're grateful for your word. Thank you that you guide us and lead us in all areas of our life. It's not just about us getting to heaven, it's producing some heaven on earth. Help us to be people that are truly peacemakers. People who understand truth and we're willing to expose lies. We're not here to be popular. We're here to honor you with our lives, and truth matters in every capacity. So God, would you guide us and lead us in this? Help us just with our immediate families. Help us with our immediate relationships, our friends, our loved ones, as we begin to talk and learn and grow. But God, put the words in our mouth. Give us understanding, I pray, to stand with and beside peace-loving people throughout the Middle East that are truly trying to achieve that in their lives, in their homes, and their families. I pray for Israel. I pray for the Israeli Defense Force. I pray for Prime Minister Netanyahu, his cabinet, all of those who are leading this offensive now. God, would you guide them and lead them in this? I pray that you would expose the enemy. God, expose Hamas, her leaders. I pray that they would make stupid errors, expose themselves. I pray that Israel does their part, but they don't do it all. Dispatch angels from heaven and destroy evil as it lays in its bed. Destroy evil as it's plotting and planning. Save these precious hostages. I pray, God, let life be returned back to homes. I pray for those that are hurting, the Palestinians as well as the Israelis that have lost lives, lost loved ones. God, comfort them and be with them. Let peace and healing and answers rush quickly to all of these who are seeking peace. God, I thank you that we can look to you in these times, calling you, know that you hear us. And God, we believe that prayer works. That's why we do it. So tonight, God, we submit our lives to you and ask that we evoke you to get involved and do the supernatural. We love you. Thank you for this. God, keep your hand on Kasim, I pray. As they move forward, Kasim and Cheyenne, as they both work together in this field, as they're training and leading and guiding others, exposing truth of who Israel is. God, bless them, protect their life, supply, meet needs, abundantly bless them, I pray. Increase them and guide and guard them as only you can. Thank you for this opportunity. In Jesus' name. Amen. Free Life Chapel, we love you. Yes.
Shout out to the Free Life Chapel media team. A lot of people were asking questions on how to get resources from Kasim, and they put together a graphic that has Kasim's information.
Of course they did.
That is
of
going
course they
up,
did,
so-
just like that. Look at that. I need to take a picture of that myself, man.
So that is Kasim, as well as some other resources that we have given, of course, including Christians United for Israel.
Yeah. And if you're not following me, you can't go to heaven. I'm just telling you that right now. So, follow Kasim. His stuff is great. I watch what he puts out. It's informational, it's educational, it's truth, it's good. We love you, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for being here tonight. We'll be right back here on Sunday. So now you know, cat's out of the bag. Sunday morning, we're going there. We're going to address it biblically. What's going on? How do we stand from a biblical perspective? It's important. We love you. Have a good night. Thanks for being here.